Budget hearings. Today we'll be hearing from MMPD, Department of Emergency Communications, Fire and EMS, as well as the Sheriff's Office, so all of our public safety folks. And so we will get started. We have joining us today Chief John Drake, as well as Samir Mehek, and as well as Richie Swagger, all from MMPD. And I'm sure they will give you their titles once they introduce themselves. And I know that Chief Drake has some opening remarks, and so I'll turn it over to you. Chief Drake, let me turn on your mic. It should be on. Press the button. Is there a button? I'm pressing all the buttons. Nothing?
I'll go see if Elizabeth is.
Okay. Let's see.
Want me to just?
Wait.
Okay.
There's no button. They need to, I think from there on, they should. No.
Chief Drake, give us like 2 minutes just to make sure we can fix it. That one works? Okay.
This one works.
Okay.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Metropolitan Council. It is my privilege to appear before you and represent the dedicated men and women of our police department during this afternoon's budget hearing. It is also my privilege and true honor to serve as Nashville's police chief, a position which I was appointed almost 6 months ago. At the onset, I want to express my appreciation for this council's support of our officers and public safety initiatives in these evolving times for our city and our nation. Your police department is also adapting in a number of ways to best serve the residents of a city we all love. Over the past 6 months, you have seen our renewed commitment to Nashville's diverse communities through engagement programs designed to foster meaningful partnerships and relationships to help neighborhoods thrive. At my direction, we have collapsed precinct-based flex units, which would proactively go into hotspots to interdict crime, but at the same time, were seen by some as an occupying, over-policing presence. We have now moved to a precision policing model with a strong emphasis on community engagement to keep our Nashville safe now and in years to come. Let me share a little bit about that philosophy. Instead of the flex teams I described, the department now has precinct-based power shifts, 9 officers and 1 sergeant per precinct, for a total of 80 personnel. These officers are working 10-hour shifts and are giving us much-needed manpower boosts during our busiest days and times, typically from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. Wednesday through Saturday. Another element of precision policing led to the repurposing of the officers in the Juvenile Crimes Task Force to a new role targeting those persons responsible for violent gun crime in our city. We have combined the former Juvenile Crimes Task Force officers with gang unit detectives to form a Titans component. Titans stands for Investigative Team Addressing Neighborhood Shootings. These detectives are leading an intelligence-based effort to identify and apprehend those gun criminals who pose a significant risk to our families. Titan detectives are responsible to murder scenes with members, responding to murder scenes with members of our recently re-centralized homicide unit so that we can advance those investigations more quickly. To ensure we are providing precision policing, investigative, and counseling services to victims of sex crimes and domestic violence, we have created an interpersonal crimes branch. Contained within that branch is a special victims unit that focuses on sex crimes and human trafficking, as well as new family intervention division to enhance victim safety and offender accountability. While we will never lose sight of strategies to identify and apprehend criminals who put safety at risk, we have a priority to engage with Nashvillians to develop neighborhood safety partnerships and solutions. I am very excited about the work being undertaken by Inspector David Emhoff and Captain Terrence Graves in our new Office of Alternative Policing Strategies. Inspector Imhoff is working with the Mental Health Co-op to begin a pilot co-response program that will have our police officers and clinicians riding with each other and responding together to mental health calls in the Hermitage and North precincts. Training will begin at the first of next month. The program will launch Monday, June 28th. At the same time, Captain Graves is working with Juvenile Court, Ron Johnson in the Mayor's Office, and other partners on the juvenile diversion and gun violence intervention. The two other priorities are the Office of Alternative Policing Strategies. In an effort to truly partner with all of Nashville, we established our first ever Office of Community Outreach and Partnerships late last year. The 15 officers working in this new component have Hispanic, Kurdish, Vietnamese, African American, and Caucasian heritage. They are both problem solvers and advocates among populations that may not have had much interaction with our police department in prior years. Major Part 1 crime in Nashville for the first 5.5 months of this year is down 12.9%, or 1,647 incidents. But that's not all good news. Homicides are up 39% this year, and aggravated assault is up 14%. That's why we are focusing on gun violence with both enforcement and prevention strategies, all at a time when our city continues to rapidly grow as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. In case Council Lady Virtue hasn't told you, Mayor Cooper's proposed budget for next fiscal year begins the staffing process for the 9th precinct to be located on Murfreesboro Pike. The first 39 officers, 1/3 of what is needed for a new precinct, are included in the mayor's proposed budget. An additional 8 positions will allow us to have 1 body camera sergeant in each of the 8 precincts to ensure camera policy compliance across the department. On the topic of body cameras, 6 of the 8 precincts are now fully equipped. Central and Midtown Hills were completed this week. That leaves South and Hermitage to be completed. We will begin outfitting those officers on June 1st and have all 8 precincts completed by July 13th. Your January approval of a deferred payment program with the camera vendor WatchGuard expedited camera dispersal and installation during 2021. Let me briefly discuss our staffing. Today, we are authorized for 1,511 officers, but are 94 short of that total. A 54-member recruit class presently in the Academy will make up more than half of the difference when they graduate in September. On August 16th, we will begin a recruit class of at least 50 police officer trainees who will graduate from the Academy early next year. And on October 1st, we will plan to begin a lateral trainee class of carefully vetted law enforcement professionals from other jurisdictions who want to work here. We expect a minimum of 50 to 60 persons in that class, but have over 120 signed up, and a vast majority are women. We will graduate from our academy at the end of this year. The training time for the lateral class is about half of that of the basic class due to the prior law enforcement experience of lateral trainees. The mayor's budget recognizes and funds the police department's need to keep technology updated, adds 2 much-needed DNA scientists to our crime laboratory, maintain staffing in our wellness program, and add additional part-time background investigators as we work to hire the best police officer candidates. Most importantly, for our officers, the budget funds across the board and step pay raises, as well as restores our longevity pay. I should say we are grateful for the commitment to our officers in terms of compensation as reflected in the mayor's proposed budget. Now to some areas of concern. Have you seen the crowds in downtown Nashville in recent weeks? The numbers have exploded, and we believe they will continue to grow over the summer. We have implemented an entertainment district initiative to help keep peace and order. This initiative is made up of volunteer or mandated officers who are being paid overtime. The total cost for this program is about $1.2 million, which we have been covering with attrition savings. Likewise, the street ratio initiative, which we believe is working to restore some peace and quiet in residential areas, is being covered through attrition savings at a cost of $600,000. As we continue to hire new officers, our savings will be reduced, leading to the possibility of a request to you later in the fiscal year for supplemental funding to continue these important programs. The next fiscal year will be both exciting and challenging for all of us. We in the police department look forward to successfully meeting those challenges with you. Thank you. Again, thank you for your support. With that, Madam Chair, I am pleased to answer any questions.
Hello?
Councilman Druffel.
You got me? Okay.
Yes, you're right.
Thanks, Chief Drake. We really appreciate you being our chief and all the hard work you do. It's noticeable very much.
Thank you.
The one question, the sergeants that you have for body-worn cameras, is that a ongoing cost, so that'll be permanent as we get those positions in?
Yes, sir. It will be an ongoing cost to ensure compliance and training and to make sure we're fully efficient police department. Yes,
a follow-up question to what you had mentioned downtown. Is there a more permanent solution that you need? Obviously, a great source of our revenue is downtown. Is there more that you need from us or in terms of staffing to handle the downtown area?
Yes, sir, and we had this discussion with my executive staff this week as we're looking at making an entertainment district initiative team a permanent fixture, just as we would have a day shift or evening shift, et cetera, but they would be designed just for the entertainment district. It would add consistency to what we're trying to do. They would know all the codes. They would know ordinances with bars, et cetera. And so we are looking, and as we get to staffing levels, we're going to make that happen.
Okay, so it's not included in this budget at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you need to include it in this budget, or you think it's too early to do that?
I think it's a little early. We can cover it right now with savings, but we will definitely, once we begin to seek implementation, then we will.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Bradford.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your service and for being here, Chief Drake. Two questions. First one, you mentioned the Southeast Precinct. Everybody in Southeast is very grateful that that's finally coming. I know a lot of my colleagues have fought hard for that. You mentioned this current budget will fund 1/3 of the positions needed. My question is, where will the other 2/3 come from?
The first 1/3 is we're phasing it in, and so we want to have those officers begin as we staff. And then in the next budget, we'll ask for the remaining. But for right now, it's going to be phased in over 2 to 3 years, and this is the initial start. So.
And follow up on the questions about the downtown. My question is, why would we create a brand new special division when you already have a precinct that is located a block or two away from downtown? Why wouldn't we refocus Central Precinct to control or to monitor downtown instead of creating extra costs to the taxpayer by creating a brand new force and paying overtime for an area that's already patrolled by a currently existing precinct?
That's a very good question. When we look at staffing levels for the police department, we have all of downtown to cover, including the Gulch area. And so it's a very demanding area, a lot of calls for service. The entertainment district venues are exploding. According to some reports, in the top 3 tourist destinations in the world. And so people are coming down in droves, and it's really, we don't have the manpower to cover that from just the Central Precinct. And so we created the Entertainment District Initiative from overtime funding to offset that with 30 officers. And so what we look at about adding a full-time entertainment district staff, then they'll be familiar with all the laws of downtown. They'll be there, 7 days a week to handle any situations that arise. Right now, we're using officers from anywhere. They may come from South Precinct, the Hermitage Precinct, and come down, and they don't know much about downtown. This would add consistency to what we're trying to achieve, and it would add, and the big theme of our police department is community engagement, trying to get to know people and them get to know us. And if we have that unit, then it's all the time getting to know each other and working together, and I think it's going to be more efficient moving forward.
And one last question, Chair. As a follow-up, when you were designing and coming up with this, have you looked at the data, looked at the numbers, seeing if before we hire more officers, spend more money for this team, are there precincts that have seen fewer calls of service that could possibly, you could reshuffle staffing and have less staff at one and boost up staff at another so that we're not adding to our expenses and being more efficient with the resources we have?
Yes, we have looked at that, and we've looked at a staffing study as well that should be completed hopefully in the months to come, but we have reviewed that. Calls for service are down, but violent crime is up in different parts of the country, different parts of the county, and we can't pull from precincts that are already minimally staffed to come downtown and leave the other parts of the city vulnerable to violent crime. So,
All right, thank you, Chair. That's all my questions for now.
yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Johnston.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me, even though I'm not on the Budget Committee. So it's, hi, Chief Trey.
Hi.
It's a little bit concerning. It's a lot concerning that we're paying for some things through attrition. And you mentioned two numbers, and I may have gotten it wrong, so correct me. I heard 1.2 million, and I heard 600,000. There were two things, so a total of 1.8 million dollars that we're paying for things through the attrition rate, which I'm hoping, I guess I'm glad we have that money because we need it, but we also need those officers. So what is our attrition rate? I know we have an aging force, and it's also an incredibly difficult job, especially in 2020 and 2021. What is our attrition rate currently?
So our attrition rate has slowed down. It's not as big as it was at one point. We're allocated for 1,511 officers, and we're now 94 officers short. If we can maintain that staff, and we got hit a little bit here in the recent weeks from the federal government, the FBI, DEA, ATF, recruiting officers to their agencies. We had some officers that wives had positions in other cities and had to leave. But in all of their comments to me, they love what we're doing and they want to stay here. And so it's just combating that. But I think as this new lateral class is going to give us what we need as far as staffing, I believe. And then the two other classes should put us over in preparing for the 9th precinct. So with that, we've been covering the different programs through attrition. Say the Entertainment District Initiative is so many people down on Broadway that we had to provide officers to make the downtown core safe. And then at the same time, we were getting calls for the Street Racer Initiative, where people were going in the areas and just speeding beyond belief, doing burnouts, et cetera. And we had to find a way, even being a short-staffed police department, how we can deal with that. And so we pull officers just for that program. And so that's what the two costs are from. So.
My district has dealt with the drag racing for sure, and so I know that that specific task force has been incredibly beneficial for that particular initiative. When you talk about 1,511 officers approved and we're 94 short, that's what we've approved in the budget. We have an ever-growing population. In your opinion, if the sky was the limit, which I know it's not, based off of our population, calls for service, crime rates, on and on, what would be your ideal staffing level?
So my ideal staffing level is what I've looked at would be between 1,800 and 2,000 officers. That is to create a presence, just a very visible presence, whether it's downtown, whether it's in other parts of town with walking patrols, just an increased presence, which would also help decrease crime as well. So.
I agree. I know we've got a lot of attention that's on downtown, and we're creating this new district, which I think is necessary. We definitely want to protect the people that are visiting our city, but we also have a whole nother city
Yep.
that, you know, the rest of the county out there that that's my district, and a lot of us that are out here, and we have our own unique needs. And so I do appreciate that there are special districts that we're creating. I do want to point out for the viewing public that there's a lot of revenue that is created by downtown that doesn't necessarily go into the general fund. It goes into different funds, and yet the general fund is what pays for police presence and things like that that are there. So that's a major concern that's not going to go away anytime soon, but we do have some money that is being diverted through some revenue bonds to pay for those revenue bonds. I want to make sure everybody understands that. Does this budget, I know there's some step pay raises and COLA that were skipped for a few years. Does this budget bring everyone back up to where they should be?
It helps tremendously. It gives them the much-needed pay raise, and it gives them the longevity back, which they lost, which should really help with our attrition as well. A lot of people depended on that, especially during the holiday season, and I think that's going to even help make them feel better about what they're doing. We also made the power shifts, which is something for each of the 8 precincts, so we can get out and serve every community better. And we did that just by repurposing officers. And so I think you'll see, we've had a major reduction in crime, about 1,600 incidents less this year than this time last year. And so I think that's some good efforts are being done by the men and women, and they, I'm sure, are happy with the pay raise that they're getting. So.
Well, they are. Thank you so much. You're appreciated, and so is every officer out there.
Thank you so much.
Councilwoman Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, for being here today.
Yes, ma'am.
You've made some refreshing changes in the department, and I appreciate that. I think your focus on diversity is great. I know we've got some new women in leadership over in the East Precinct, and that's very much appreciated. It also is reflective of the community, too. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You know, I see that morale is up. So, you know, again, I think that you're doing some really great work, and that is much appreciated and seen in the community as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
So I have some questions for you. And a lot of these are detailed, so I don't know if you'll know these today, and you can possibly get back to us. But one of the things, do you know how much of the budget request is tied to the COB's 11 recommendations?
Are you talking about the new recruitment?
Or the Community Oversight Board's recommendations, yeah.
Okay, so they have the recommendations, which I have not seen fully. I've seen something that came out in the paper, but we've already made some very strong gains in the recruitment area and towards their 11 recommendations. The one that we haven't is having someone from the COB involved in our recruitment process, which is definitely something we can make happen. I've been 100% transparent in what we do and really love our interaction with the COB, and so we'll take those recommendations and implement them. But that is the one that I think would be good to have their input as well. We value that. So as far as how much of that is tied to the budget, it's already a part of what we do. We've changed our recruitment and strategies. We've repurposed the unit, put full-time officers in with the funding that's already in existence. And we're vetting our officers a lot better, too. And it's just part of the 3 pillars that I established as we moved this police department forward. The first was organizational excellence, bringing in the right people, vetting the right people, and then training them to a standard. community engagement, getting to know the community, making sure the community knows us so we can have those positive interactions. And then precision policing, identifying those people that are creating problems and either dealing with it through arrest or through diversion. We know that we can't arrest our way out of it, and so we're doing everything we can to in those three areas. So.
Thank you for that. And also thank you for the disciplinary action for the officers from last year. I know that was just here in the news in the past few days, and it is one of the strongest messages. I think that, you know, we want to make sure that we are, and every officer I know gets up and says, how can I be successful today? And nobody wants to ever be in that situation. But I think that training piece, and so I was curious in looking at the budget, you know, the training that's out there. And one thing that stood out to me in particular was on one of the line items, it says the background investigators and psych evals for new recruits. Mm-hmm. Do we do psych evals for existing officers?
Well, we do when we have some type of concern that comes up through one of our forms where an officer may be involved with more use of force, or it comes to our attention, then it goes to behavioral analysis, and we review it. We have peer supporters that actually interacts with them as well. So we do. So.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've got two more for. Do you know how big the crime lab backlog is?
So at one time it was 2,700 cases, and now it's down to 207. And so they've been working on it over the last 9 years and down to 207. Some of that has been resourced out to the TBI, but they're working really hard. And the two additional DNA persons would be very, very, very good for the lab. So.
And certainly we want that number to be zero as far as what needs to go to the lab, but what's the normal amount that are going? What's the rate?
Those numbers have increased as we have asked for more reporting of sex crimes and et cetera, getting rid of that stigma that you're going to be frowned upon if you report it, and so those numbers have like greatly increased. And it's something that we want. We want those incidents reported, and so the exact number of how many it varies, but it has increased. So.
Thank you. So I think the only other thing in this is, you know, it's a little bit of commentary, but I think it's important for the community to understand the budget's 4.5% higher than the prior year, than last year. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, of course, is the new precinct. A lot of that is the good things that you're doing. Mm-hmm. I think it's important for the community to understand the messaging around that and what you're doing, because there is going to be pushback about why is it more than last year. Especially with public safety being 20% of our budget, not just MNPD, but public safety being 20% of our budget. It's the third largest chunk of what we do. So I think, you know, that's something that I want to be prepared to answer to my constituents about how is it and what are these numbers making up. So I appreciate all of the detail. I also want to make sure that the public understands that, you know, this is a higher budget at a time when people are saying things like defund the police. I don't like the word defund. You and I have talked about that.
Right.
But, you know, at a time that the public is saying, let's pull things back, I think it's important that we have a strong message saying what this is and why it's more and how we're implementing the changes that the community and the public is asking for, not just here, but nationwide as well. Mm-hmm. So, as you know, the eye is on you. It always is, right?
That's true, and I totally agree. And you know, I didn't know it, but a lot of people are looking at our police department around the country. I'm getting emails and calls from different people wanting to know what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing it. And so we're setting a trend for other people to follow, and I really like that. And I'm proud to lead a great agency of men and women, and then working with a great city as well. So
thank you for that. It is absolutely refreshing, as I started my comments with, and I think you've instilled a level of trust, at least with this council member, that what you're doing and the work you're doing is making a difference in the community, and that it is making the community safer and better, and in a way that it also is protecting them and is creating less violence. So big, important thing in the people with whom I'm plugged in. And again, instilling that level of trust has been very good, very important. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Councilwoman Hurd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief, for being here and your staff and all the good work that you're doing. You know, it's really interesting. I picked up this little Post-it note to put my notes on, and it's a victim intervention program. But so you were talking about the overtime. That means that you saved those dollars that you had designated for overtime that you're using for the entertainment district. Okay, now I'm while I believe and hopeful for the new, I always have to go back to the old. Just last night, the council passed a resolution that gun violence was a health crisis in the city. And I would much rather see us put that money towards stopping the gun violence, dealing with that issue. I know that violence is down, but I think homicides are up. And I think that we've got to be intentional and focused on some of those things. So I appreciate it, but I mean, we may have a few tourists from every now and then, but typically our tourists are pretty well-behaved tourists, don't you think?
I think so. So if I can address that, and gun violence is up, and we're faring better than a lot of other cities, but it is up 39%. I'll tell anyone, Nashville is the safest city if you're not involved with drugs, gangs, and illicit activity. Those are factors that are surrounding that. But I've made a very strong commitment to gun violence. We have the Office of Alternative Policing Strategies and Inspector Emhoff, and we have Captain Terrence Graves, who is working with that as well. He'll be working with the mayor's office and Ron Johnson in working with gun violence and deferred intervention, juvenile diversion, and others to try to get gun violence down. I've actually had meetings with actual different stakeholders, including former gang members who are trying to organize gang walk-away days, gun turn-ins, and then I've been employing the community, especially for people that have juveniles that have guns, search their rooms, turn their guns in without any consequence, because we want the guns off the street. And so I think, in the beginning of the year, we've seen a really high spike, and that has come down some as we've put in some of these strategies. And so our focus is, although we do have the Entertainment District Initiative, our focus is really big on gun violence, too. So.
Okay, thank you. I really would like to see that effort in a robust way.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, I recall that one of the officers had indicated that they could not keep the community rooms and precincts open for the community because they didn't have the money in overtime in order to pay for officers to keep those rooms open. And to me, I think that that those rooms are just as much taxpayers' rooms as they are for the police. So I hope that that is something that will change, considering that you do have access or excess in overtime.
Yeah, and I appreciate that response, and I'm not sure who said that, but that's not one of my missions for the department or for any of the precincts. Those
we can talk offline about who it is, and I can
okay.
send you the emails if necessary.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd love to see it because that's not what we want. We're committed to community engagement, and if we need a community room open for the community, we can do that. And,
let me just, I might have to recount that because, they've been taking off a lot of our emails. If they hadn't been in the most recent months, they may not. But I can tell you who the officer is.
Okay.
And also, special events. I know that secondary employment would, get funds. That was a way of generating funds in order to support. So I'm hoping that that is going to be offered to agencies and organizations and people that may have these events like parades and things that are upcoming, and that the officers will be able to support those events again.
Absolutely.
Okay, and let's see, is one other question that I wanted to ask. what percentage of your budget is going to be used for training? You know, the training of seasoned officers in implicit biases or mental health, dealing with mental health victims. And I do realize that there's a relationship that you have with Mental Health Co-op and that you're really moving forward with that. But I'm really, really interested in that and making sure that we take care of those individuals who display mental health crisis.
Okay. Yeah, that's 5% of our budget.
Okay.
So, okay.
Well, I sure hope you keep up the good work. And,
Well, thank you, ma'am.
And I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
you.
Okay.
Chief Drake, I was looking through the information that you submitted as part of the questionnaire, and it seemed like a big chunk of your vacant positions were school crossing guards. How do you determine how many school crossing guards are needed? Is that a request from MNPS, or how does that work?
So it's a little bit of both, and thank you for that question. So we look at what's requested from the school system, and then we have a traffic section that goes out and make an assessment of those areas. Are there kids out walking? Are there crosswalks? If there's pedestrian traffic, kids out walking, then we provide school crossing guards. If it's just vehicular traffic, and then we won't provide a crossing guard for that because they can, traffic takes care of itself. So it's a combination of both.
So with the vacant positions, is there currently money in your budget to fill those positions, or you don't have the funding to fill those positions?
There is funding in the budget, and that's part of our attrition savings.
Okay. So if there isn't a need for those positions because there hasn't been a request, or you've gone out to assess and you don't think a school crossing guard is needed, is it possible to just go ahead and repurpose those funds to cover other parts of your budget? Or do you have to keep that funding available for those positions?
That's what we're doing now. We're using those attrition savings for the other programs that we have, whether it's through civil unrest and we have to fund that, or if it's through tornado and extra staffing for that as well. Also for the entertainment district, street racial initiative, and any other initiatives that we're putting together, we use all of that attrition just to cover that. As we get to 100% or over 100%, then we won't have those savings as much, and I think it's going to affect us more on the impact. So
I think I'm a little confused. I want to make sure I understand, because I understand that some of the vacancies are the number of officers that you're short. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about the number of officers you're short, are you including school crossing guards in that number, or is that a separate bucket of employees?
Those are separate. The officers, we're 94 short on officers, but then we're also short on school crossing guards, and we use that towards our attrition as well.
Okay. Because I'm trying to figure out if there is, if you only need, I can't remember the number of vacancies you have for school crossing guards, but if the need is only for a fraction of that, then why not just go ahead and cut those positions and use that money, as you've been doing, to pay for other things?
That's true. We'll look at that, but we'll make an assessment to try to make sure schools are safe, and if we have to increase one or decrease or whatever, then we make that assessment as we go. But I'll look at that.
Okay. And before I kick it back to the other council members who are here, can you talk a little bit more about the mental health co-op and the amount of personnel that you're going to be using for that, and the cost associated with it?
Okay, so right now it's not going to be any additional cost for the mental health co-response. It's going to be a partnership, a pilot program that'll begin June 28th. It'll be in the Hermitage and North precincts. I wanted it on both sides of town that has the highest number of crisis intervention calls. And it turns out that Hermitage was there, and so was North. And so we wanted to make sure that we service those two areas with the pilot. We'll have clinicians from the mental health co-op. I believe it's going to be between 4 and 6 clinicians, and then 8 officers as far as officers. It's not going to take any additional funds because we're just pulling officers from what we already have to be on this team. We're soliciting officers that are dedicated to the mental health co-response and crisis intervention, that has a passion for that. And we know it's going to be a great energy towards moving towards that program. And right now it's just no additional cost, but I see a lot of benefits with it. So.
And are those 8 officers, are they receiving some additional training, mental health training?
Yes, they will be receiving additional mental health training. They'll be working with the clinicians on an ongoing basis. And so it's going to be, I believe it's going to be a great program. So.
Councilman Bradford.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me again. So as I figured, as we went on, I had more questions that popped up. So the first one, this next one, I don't know if you could answer or if this would go towards general services later. But I know there was in the capital spending plan money for new vehicles. So my question is, of our current fleet and what we're bringing in, the percentage of vehicles running on fossil fuels and those that we're trying to get that's either hybrid or purely electric.
So I'll have to get you that number. We do have some hybrid vehicles. We're very short on vehicles. In fact, we've asked for the city to repurpose some of the cars that's been deadlined in other agencies within metro government, and then we absorb the cost of vehicle repairs. And so we're taking any and everything that's really, still usable and effective to keep our fleet going. But I can get you the exact number on what is used in fossil fuels and et cetera. But we do have hybrid. So.
And you mentioned the costs that you're eating to repair. I would like that information as well too, so we kind of have an idea of what we're spending, or what the taxpayers are spending to get these cars to stay in the fleet, as well as making sure that we're being forward-thinking and getting vehicles that will require less fuel, which in the long run will be better for the environment and our wallets. You mentioned the diversion aspect of service calls, and I assume you're mentioning, or you reference that diversion is for mental health, or making sure people don't go to jail who don't need to go to jail. Can you elaborate? Is there any more you can elaborate on that? How much do you work in partnership with Sheriff Hall with his program to make sure that people who really don't need to go to jail but just need some help are getting that help and not getting a record?
Yeah, so Sheriff Hall and I have a great working relationship, and so that's going to be really, Inspector Emhoff is running that program. But we're going to divert what we can to the behavioral care center. We're also, for juveniles that we can divert as well, we're going to divert them to other programs and other services. We've talked to the juvenile court about that as well. And so putting people in penal facilities is not the answer when they have a mental health problem. And so we're going to work with Sheriff Hall. He knows it, the Behavioral Care Center, and so we're going to divert a lot more. Instead of taking someone to jail and leaving them and then coming back out, some of those people have as many as 100 to 200 arrests, and it wasn't doing any good at all. But if we can put them in these centers, get them the help, the services they need, we feel it's going to be more beneficial. So.
And along those lines, earlier today I had a meeting with NOLA about a proposal that they had that I believe would be something that could work in tandem with the co-responding that you are working on, that, in my opinion, will help save costs for Metro PD, because these would be calls that your officers are not going on, and providing extra resources for those who might need help with mental health. So I'll be more than happy if you don't already have that information before that proposal over that they sent me. So
if I may answer, I have that response from them. They want to do the cahoots model, and I'm familiar with that. They do it in Denver, and actually we talk with our mental health experts here who about the two programs, and we both feel that the best model is the co-response. And so, but I am aware of it, and they've been in communication with NOAA as well. So that communication will be ongoing. So,
and two more. One, I wanted to follow up with Councilmember Hurt's comment. You know, I too have been told and had people tell me that when they tried to get events booked at Hermitage Precinct, and of course this was pre-COVID. That due to budget reasons, because they couldn't keep someone on staff there, that they were actually deterring people and local groups from having events after hours at the community rooms, which I agree with Councilmember Hurt. Our taxpayers are paying to keep the lights on in that room. Our communities should be allowed to use community rooms. So I hope this budget has some money in there to ensure that those rooms are staffed so that the community can use what they're paying.
So I'm not sure why that message was relayed to anyone, if it was, but definitely I'll make sure that that's not a message from me and what I want from our police department, because I do believe that is their precincts as well, and we want to make them accessible for people to use at any time. And so this is news to me, but definitely moving forward, you shouldn't get any more of those complaints. I can pretty much guarantee it. So.
Thank you for that. And just one last question I have for now, unless something else comes up. I'm glad Councilmember Toombs brought up the crossing guards, because I saw that when I was going through the book today. And my two questions, because every time I pass a school and see a crossing guard, they're what I would consider a civilian. They're not an officer wearing a uniform. So my question is, how many schools are using MNPD crossing guards as compared to a civilian? Is that civilian being paid? Are they being paid from MNPD, MNPS? Are they volunteering? And kind of leading to, if I almost feel like that should be something that MNPS is covering the cost of instead of the police.
That's a very good question. I can't give you the answer on how many school crossing guards. I have looked at that information before. I have researched the possibility of it falling under MNPS and maybe also being outsourced to a private company. So I've looked at those options, and we'll just keep exploring it more. But I understand.
All right, and in case I don't get another opportunity, I just want to say I do appreciate everything that MNPS or MNPD has done. I really appreciate the relationship I've built with South and Hermitage Precinct commanders. And so all my questions are not to be negative. I'm just trying to make sure that we are doing right by the taxpayers and holding everybody, not just MNPD, but everybody accountable.
I totally appreciate that. I appreciate your questions and everybody else's as well. And when it comes to precincts, that's definitely something that one of the main core pillars is community engagement. And we want to make sure that we're engaging community, and those facilities are open. It has nothing to do with overtime, staffing, and all that. We need to make that happen for our communities if they want to meet. And so I totally appreciate hearing this. So.
And so we are at time for MNPD, but if you could, Chief Drake, bear with us for a couple more questions and we'll be done. Councilwoman Allen.
Thank you. One of my questions was about the cahoots model, and if we were looking at having mental health people without the accompaniment of an officer in certain conditions ever be considered as part of our model. And I'm thinking you already answered that and said right now we feel like it needs to be a team.
I do. I feel like I feel, and so does the mental health co-op, feel like that the best response right now is the co-response. And so we did, in fact, before I even met with them, I had already looked at that, and they just confirmed that's, the best approach right now.
Appreciate that. I know Memphis has had a model for some years, and I'm not sure which theirs is, but it's been around a lot longer than Denver's has, so I know we've got some other cities to learn from. Okay. I will say a little bit about the school crossing guard. In my part of town, it's not that you don't. The issue has been recruiting civilians. I believe they're always civilians, and it's simply very hard to find someone who can work for those hours of the day just because the pay is fairly low, and it's hard to live near school. So I know that that's an issue that is very difficult, and I appreciate the work y'all are doing because the schools are clamoring for them and the parents desperately want them. So I hope we can continue to fund that program if we can just find the people to fill those positions.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Thank you for all y'all are doing. We're grateful that y'all are being so responsive to what we're hearing from the community, and it really makes a difference that you're listening.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure and our honor. So.
Chief Drake, I think the final question will be mine. I don't see any other hands. I wanted to ask you about school resource officers. I hear a lot about those from folks who want to, divert resources from the police into other things. And has there been any discussion about rethinking how we use school resource officers or repurposing them? And are there any vacancies in that category?
So that's a good question. Thank you. There are a very minimal amount of vacancies with school resource officers, but we have repurposed them already. We moved them out of the patrol division, which is our community services bureau, and put them with the youth services division, and repurposed them to where they're doing some more social services. They're not there just for as like a security guard to make arrests and et cetera, but to also to try to identify kids that are going down that path, the pipeline to prison. How do we connect them with juvenile court, with other providers, and giving them the services to try to prevent that pipeline to prison. And so they have been repurposed. They've been moved to a totally new division, and really looking to do great things with not just as the police presence, but helping kids be more successful. They're tutoring, they're mentoring, they're just doing a lot more now. So.
Now, are there any vacancies, or is that program fully staffed?
There was a minimal amount of vacancies. I don't think it was more than maybe 5 to 6 vacancies, but we normally have those filled when school's going on. So.
Well, thank you, Chief Drake, Mr. Mahek, and Mr. Swagger. We appreciate your time, and y'all can enjoy the rest of your day. And Chief Drake, for the questions that you're going to provide follow-up answers to, if you could direct those to Director Cooper so that he can share them with the full council.
Yes, ma'am, I will. Thank you.
And next up, we'll have the Department of Emergency Communications, and we'll give folks a couple minutes to breathe and let them get up here and seated.
Thank you.